Hello, everyone. It is me, Jordyn Smith, the voice and the astrologer behind this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Contents. Today, we have the Pisces Lunar Eclipse happening in the evening, this part of the world. And other parts, it's going to be happening in the early morning hours of the 18th. Before I jump into this lunar eclipse, I want to make a couple of announcements and then we're gonna jump into this and I'm gonna show you the chart and that way you can follow along. This week I didn't do a written report. I have not had time to do one of those, but two things. One is, or actually three. One is if you're a Virgo, you have until the 20th to book a Virgo birthday special, and then it's going to switch over to Libras. There will be an announcement on my website about it. So if you want to get those, just go to my website and subscribe. A little thing will pop up that asks for you to subscribe, and that way you can get all of the announcements. Second thing is, as you know, I'm doing that EA conference. I'm going to post a link below in the description. That way you all can get a 10% off the conference pass. That's the beginning of October. And I really hope to see some of you all there. And then lastly, I did this in the spring and I'm doing it now. If you go to my website, again, I will post the link in the description. I am opening up, there's not just a birthday special going on, there is a fall eclipse special that's happening for you all. It is 60 minutes on Zoom with me for $80, where I will answer all of your questions about these eclipses happening and what they are reflecting and meaning for you in your natal chart. I will record this. That way, even afterwards, you can have the recording and you can rewatch it. And it's me personally, I think eclipse readings are really good because it is showing you your karmic endings and beginnings and the things that you're trying to really focus in on for the next 6 months. An eclipse cycle is 6 months. So if you think back to the spring and what was going on with those eclipses, this is, a culmination of those dynamics happening. And so that's really, and I guess I can jump more into this eclipse now for you all. Really, whenever we're looking at eclipses, like I said, they're karmic beginnings, karmic endings, and that doesn't, I think some people are like, oh my gosh, deaths and blah, blah, blah. And that does happen during eclipse season for some people. If you think about the last eclipse, there was a few celebrities that passed during those eclipses. But that's usually not the case for people. It's more of karmically, you have done what you need to do, and there is a final closure or a final closing of those dynamics. And then again, there are things that can come up during this 2-week period. It's like a portal in time to really show what it is that you need to be honing in and working on for the next 6 months. It's fascinating to think about because a lunar eclipse is a full moon. And those are usually denoting a karmic closure, some type of something's come to an end, or there's some type of closure or some type of information that is being brought to the light of the day around emotional dynamics in order for you to wrap up some sort of cycle. And then for karmic beginnings, you'll typically see this around the solar eclipse, which is a new moon. And so this is, if you just think of the archetypal nature of a full moon and a new moon, right? And a new moon is, again, it's a solar eclipse. So it's really highlighting what it is that you're needing to start a brand new cycle of. So yeah, this is a Pisces eclipse for those of you who are new to this channel or don't maybe follow along to astrology that often. But let's talk a little bit about the archetype of Pisces. So that way, whenever I pull up this chart, you guys can really be able to follow along. So Pisces is one of those signs that I think a lot of people have a hard time trying to grasp. On the one hand, it contains within it all the other signs within the zodiac. It's at the end of the zodiac. So it can bring forth a lot of culmination, meaning that when things are culminating, there's also an enlightening factor that happens. That's why this happened, and that's what that meant. And it helps you to further culminate those dynamics. Pisces is also, coincidentally, there's so much confusion around it because it can bring a sense of confusion for some people. Its polarity is Virgo, and for some people, when they're not doing the healthy Virgo work of figuring out what's not quite white and what quite right and what is needing to be improved upon, there can be this dynamic of denying it, right? Of denying something that's going on, or in Virgo, we can start making excuses about something, or on the flip side, we can be not wanting to see the truth, right? Which is another form of denial. And so, what can happen as a way to course correct is you can get a Virgo like crisis that happens. And sometimes they can be really big, and sometimes they're more on a smaller scale. But what that does is it pulls in Pisces, and there is this confusion. And the confusion is actually this dynamic that starts to help us, each one of us, when we go through that, ask, why is this happening and what is going on and what can I do about this? And oftentimes with Pisces, we don't really know until the dust settles, until that nebulous kind of mist of the mind settles, and then we have the ahas. So there's that dynamic that can happen for some people during this time as well, where there is that confusion. Pisces is also where we're giving ultimate meaning, and it's where we can have a devotional and spiritual practice as well. If we're giving ultimate meaning to something outside of ourselves, well, sometimes that's whenever crisis can happen, as a way to get us to course correct, and get us back on track to devoting ourselves to something that's a worthy cause, or whether that's on an internal level or an external level. So there's that dynamic. And then there's also, I mean, the list goes on with Pisces. As I said, it is containing all of the other archetypes within it. So that's where we get universal and timeless principles, is through each teaching of the zodiac. When we come to the end, to Pisces, it has all of this really intense information and intake of different dynamics that we've been working on. That way we can understand the timelessness and the universality, can't speak today, of those dynamics. And that's why on the one hand you have this culmination, and on the other it's bringing forth something in order for a new birth to happen, stemming from those dynamics. I like to think of Pisces, and I'm sure some of you have heard this, is it's the cosmic womb. It's where we are just in our pure consciousness if we allow ourselves to be. So those are just a few of the archetypes of Pisces. So let's talk about this chart, and I'm going to bring it up. What is this meaning? Now, remember, this is a generalized view of this. These are the generalized energies. If you really want to understand what this is meaning for you, look at where all of these planets and luminaries are falling in your own natal chart by house, because that'll give you a lot of information. If you don't understand or you're having confusion, Piscean confusion around it, come see me. I would love to explain and answer some of your questions for you. So let's take a look at this. So in evolutionary astrology, you always want to start with Pluto. All right. So we're going to start with that. Pluto's ruler is Saturn. And then we're also going to talk about this Pisces lunar eclipse. Now, an eclipse happens whenever it's within 12 degrees of the nodal axis. And so because this full moon is not sitting directly on top of this north node, this is why it's called a partial eclipse. So that's just something I wanted to explain to people who are new. So let's talk about this. Pluto is at 29 degrees Capricorn, where it's going to be here until November 18th. There are two things I want you to keep in mind here. One is this is the last time that Pluto is going to be in Capricorn for over 240 years. So this is really like putting an exclamation point on these dynamics. The second thing is that this lunar eclipse is out of sign, meaning that it's not in Aries Libra, but it's close to that nodal axis. So what this is gearing us up for and showing us and teaching us about is whenever the nodes switch on January 12th of 2025, so just in a few months, they're going to be in the same signs. It's going to be a north node in Pisces and a south node in Virgo. And so it's gearing us up for this type of energy that we will be exploring and coming to understand on a deeper level for 18 months once that nodal switch occurs. So Pluto and Capricorn, as I've talked about in the past, has really been about this deconstructing of structures. And I want each one of us to think about ever since 2008, when Pluto entered the sign of Capricorn, what are the structures in your life that you've been confronted with? How have they changed? What did that mean for you? Was that a way of you self-improving? I know for me it was. And what are the new structures that you're starting to see on the horizon? If we look at this in a broader sense, since 2008, we're looking at things on a societal and political and social, cultural level, and the structures that have on a collective level we've been confronted with that are just not working. Okay. So with Pluto at 29 degrees Capricorn in retrograde, for some of us, we can be experiencing right now certain dynamics that are a reliving of prior dynamics. But what I want to say is that that doesn't mean that you have to be on a karmic loop. I'm going to stop this and then I'm going to bring it back up in just a second. What I have found personally, and then with clients, is this Pluto, and this is fabulous for this lunar eclipse, okay? Which is about culminating and bringing into the light of day what needs to dissolve and what wants to appear for a new chapter to begin, right? What ways in which can we continue to self-improve? But what I've seen with Pluto and Capricorn since September, with clients and then just personally, is this is where we're getting these relive, redo in order to resolve. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like what I said, this we're stuck in this karmic loop of I'm just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. And why am I doing this? And I'm banging my head and I'm like, ah, no. What I've actually been seeing for a lot of people is it's more of this final stamp, period, exclamation point. This is done. This is over with. I'm not doing this anymore. And so there's more of this soul testing that's going on. And Capricorn, as many of you have heard me say it before, when it is naturally expressed, it is about self-determination to make correct judgment, to self-reflect, to get into the emotional body, to not suppress or repress that, to really look at what is going on. And with Pluto in the sixth house of this chart, pulling in more of a Virgo dynamic, this is where can be tested on a soul level over the next 2 weeks, especially, and then have a bit more opportunity in the next 6 months to be self-determined, to not be who we once were. Meaning, for me personally, I have talked to you guys, I have a lot of Capricorn and I have a Libra moon that this Pluto is squaring. And so, for me, it has been very much about holding boundaries for myself and surrendering any type of control around what I thought my expectations were going to be. And this actually really goes beautifully with the nodal axis that's happening right now because it's pulling in the Aries Libra dynamics. So for me, I've had to, and Pluto's on my Mercury as well, but I've had to use my voice and have courage to say what it is that I need to say for my own healing. And then the feedback I receive, that gives me an opportunity to make a correct judgment on if I want to proceed with something or how I want to proceed about it. And that's just for me personally, okay? But I've seen this dynamic. Oh my gosh, my kids wrote on me. I have seen this dynamic in a plethora of ways come up for people, but ultimately, this Pluto in this chart is speaking to there can be these soul tests around correct judgment, discernment, and self-improvement, and also self-determination. These things come up and it's actually more like we've been practicing, right? I've been talking about this, and that's so much of that sixth house that Pluto's in. And all of the Virgo energy that's been leading up to this lunar eclipse is there's been this practice of who you want to be in the world, how you want to be impeccable with your actions. Is the outside matching and reflecting the inside? Are you able to walk in your own sovereignty, in your own authenticity? Are you able to say what it is that you need to say? Are you able to make the correct choices that you need to make? So this can be where it's more of just peeling back layers of the onion, and that's typically what happens with Pluto. And because this is Capricorn at 29 degrees, that last degree, the culmination of these dynamics, this can be where we're being confronted yet once again with the same dynamic. And it's to almost prove to ourselves that, no, I'm not that person. I have come a long way. I'm the mountain goat right now. I'm looking over my shoulder and reflecting. I've come so far. I'm not making the same choices that I used to, and I don't have to anymore. So there's a bit of that dynamic that's going on with this lunar eclipse. And that's interesting to note because Pluto's ruler is Saturn retrograde in Pisces, ruled by Neptune, which is conjunct this moon, and the moon is balsamic to it. But let's break this down. Saturn and Pisces in the seventh house is just, it's a repeating karmic signature of this chart. There's a restructuring process coming on. Are you rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion? The seventh house. How have you been structuring your ability to listen to others? How have you been structuring your reality around the way in which you give and you receive? Are you able to receive? Are you able to understand what it is that you need? How are you being in relationships with other people, with your friends and society? So again, this is helping us really deal with these dynamics, not even on an internal level, but on an external level through our relationships with others. And then that is also really reflected with Venus in Libra and the South Node in Libra. Okay. So again, when you're looking at charts, and transits, and even people's natal charts, you want to look at the repeating signatures. And this chart is rich with these repeating signatures of culmination of long-standing dynamics on an internal level and the ways in which we do relationships with others and our own personal voice of authority and how we want to be out in the world. And then we've got Saturn's ruler, Neptune, conjunct this lunar eclipse, which I want you guys to know, and Neptune is retrograde. We are not going to have another lunar eclipse with Neptune conjuncted in our lifetime. This is a big deal. And then you pull in that dynamic of Pluto being at that anaretic degree of 29, also reflecting culmination. Now, I want you to look at how this lunar eclipse and Neptune are sextile Pluto and also sextile Uranus. Okay. So Pluto is sextile to the moon and Neptune in a crescent phase sextile. And this really helps us to bring in this energy of what is the vision that we have for the future? What have we been getting to the bottom of? Our dependencies, our needs, our projections, our expectations. How has that changed? What is being culminated during this time? Are you still experiencing ideals around prior dynamics? What needs to continue to heal and improve in that area? And then the sextile from well, before I say that, that also is denoting how this is helping us to have this full encompassing restructuring process within our consciousness, okay? It's really helping us to see the vision for the future while also sitting firmly in the present moment. And then the sextile from the moon and Neptune to Uranus is about, again, this transformative process of our inner relationship to self, because it's really highlighting all of this work that we've been doing for so long, especially since 2008. Think about that, since 2008. So it's, how are you wanting to show up in the world? How do you want to take all of this that you've been working on? How do you want to present yourself in a social way? Are there gifts that you've received through the work that you've done on an internal level that now you want to share with others? What does that service look like? How do you want to be of service? If you are someone who's devotional and devoting themselves to spirituality, have you been asking for the guidance of how you want to do that? The key with this is, because this Saturn is being pulled into the mix, not only is it Pluto's ruler, but Saturn is ruled by this Neptune, and it's in the same sign as this lunar eclipse. It's also opposing Mercury and Virgo in the first house. So it's, what things can you improve upon through throwing some of it off? Maybe it needs to be opposed. Maybe you're coming to understand that there's still some more work here. The other dynamic is that where maybe you feel like you're not ready enough yet? And is that you actually denying what you're being asked to do in the big picture? So that's one way that that can show up in this chart for others. And then you have Jupiter and Gemini, ruled by that Mercury, and it's square to this full moon. So it's square to the sun and the moon. So to me, this is also reflecting this continued effort for individuation that's wanting to happen right now. Jupiter's in that 11th house. How do we expand upon our own inner knowing, our own intuition? How do we apply that to this restructuring and culmination process that's underway? Are you able to stand out and be a group of one if necessary? What dynamics of prior relational instances are ending? What new ones are beginning? How are you able to be authentic and still be independent? Staying whole into yourself, not feeling like you need something, someone else, or job, or anything that's outside to complete you. How are you able to understand that you're complete and whole into yourself already? That's part of that Jupiter square. And then Mars is also square the nodal axis in the chart, and its resolution node is that north node. Mars is ruled by this lunar eclipse. And to me, this is really about liberating from prior emotional dynamics that have structured your life. And now the need to continue to do the inner emotional work, but to also cultivate these new patterns of awareness because you're transforming. That means you're not the same as who you once were. That means you've got to continuously get to know yourself. Mars in Aries is about being in this perpetual state of becoming, not getting too comfortable with what's going on, not allowing it to crystallize in a way that actually prevents growth. And this Mars in this chart is saying, on the one hand, we've got all of these culminating energies. We're having things really illuminated for us to see a bigger, brighter future. But the work isn't done, and you've got to keep going. You've got to keep putting one foot in front of the other. You've got to continue to do your own evolutionary work. And that means to look into the emotional dynamics and to feel pure emotion, which is Pisces. So there's this really beautiful water energy that's being evoked with not only this lunation being a full moon eclipse, a lunar eclipse, but also it's in the sign of Pisces, and you've got Mars squaring this nodal axis. That's really speaking to the emotional dynamics that we are refusing to continue to relive, the emotional patterns that we're refusing to relive now that we've seen where they've caused imbalances or where they've provoked instances or crisis in our life in the past. And now it's about, hey, we're closing up old patterns and now we're beginning new ones. To me, I feel like this lunation is so based around healing and understanding on an internal level. Pisces Virgo can be deeply healing when you get to the center of your emotional dynamics, which has been asked of us to do for quite some time now, especially I would say the last 5 years. And then the other thing that denotes a lot of healing with this chart, healing through closing up. It's like this is like a lunar eclipse that's like speaking to suturing up something and like putting healing properties on it. So that way, new tissue can grow. And that's really seen with Venus in this chart being Uranus and the South Node's ruler, but it's opposing Chiron and Aries, which is ruled by that Mars. It's putting this stamp, that Capricornian Pluto anaretic stamp, all of the culminating dynamics, a stamp, exclamation point on We're not doing what we did in the past anymore. We're throwing that off and we're cultivating new patterns so that our awareness around our wounds can change. And maybe we can bring this forth into the world to allow other people to know that they're not alone and that it can be done. Because although this is a Pisces lunar eclipse, again, there's this really big Saturnian Capricornian influence that's going on. And that means that for a lot of people, the work that you've been doing can now really hold up a mirror for other people to see that it's done. Because when Cap and Saturn and the 10th house, which is, we've got energy falling in that 10th house in the chart, is where one can be a natural role model. How are you going to show up in the world impeccable and be a natural role model through doing your own healing work? And then this lunation also speaks to the need to continue this journey. For others, I think there's this dynamic with Pisces that I do want to express, and it's a universal experience. Okay, we're talking about universal experiences. Because if you're needing to be a role model and show up in the world authentically and impeccably, that means that you could have a personal voice of authority that really expresses universal qualities. Meaning that I've been through something that a lot of other people have been through. You have too. And there are gifts. It is rich with gifts that are meant to be expressed and shared with others. The thing about Pisces that isn't often talked about is that we've all had crisis occur sometimes in our lives. And this is a lunation that can get us to reflect on it so that way we can close a chapter and move forward, all right? But this can be where we can do all of the self-improving work and still not understand why something happened. And over the next 2 weeks, that can bring a lot of that up for us. For some, they'll experience something where they don't understand, and they might not ever, or they will at a later date. I know that again, it's a universal experience. I've had things since 2008 go on in my life that were very crisis inducing. Again, I have the nodes of Virgo Pisces. Very crisis inducing. And all I could do was keep putting one foot in front of the other and showing up and doing my own healing work, even if I felt like it was going to kill me. And there are things that actually, for me, things that happened back in 2008 that I could not understand why they happened. I have just now had the aha moments, the dots connecting in my mind as to why that happened. And I was able to take full accountability and responsibility for my own choices, because that is part of the healing journey that Pisces asks of us. There is a natural sextile between Pisces and Capricorn, because it's about restructuring ourselves in a more holistic and universal, timeless way. And that means not living in victimization and holding oneself accountable for the choices that led us to certain situations. Now, there are crises that happen for some people that are completely out of their control, but at the end of the day, we're talking about evolution and karmic dynamics and evolutionary necessity. There are some things that happen to people that they are not going to understand why it happened in this lifetime. For other people, it'll be at a later time. And this lunation, part of this eclipse, can either, on the one hand, things could be triggered externally to get them to wrap up a whole evolutionary cycle, and they may not even understand. It can bring in the Piscean confusion nebulous energy. For other people, seeing as this lunation is sextile to Pluto and to Uranus, they can really understand, oh my God, that's why that happened in the past. And now I feel like I can move forward. At the end of the day, regardless of what's going on in your life, there's this need to continue to self-reflect in order to improve in our judgment and in discerning the correct choices and actions for ourselves, and to not give ultimate meaning to something outside of ourselves, and to ask during these 2 weeks, show me what it is that I'm meant to do in such a way that I cannot deny it. This would be amazing to work with this Pisces lunar eclipse. So this is your eclipse information. I will be talking about the upcoming eclipse. I will be talking about other transits that are going on during this 2-week period. If you have questions, as always, put them in the comments. I love connecting with you guys. If you want to know really how this is pertaining to you and your situation, or your own evolutionary growth, again, I have that special going on. You can click the link in the description and book that. And then also Libras, be on the lookout, because in just a couple of days, it's going to switch to your birthday special as well. I hope all of you all are gentle with yourselves, and that this is a very healing 2-week period of time. It will be really interesting to see what's going on in the collective during this time. What I can say is that sometimes with these energies, Neptune on the moon, Saturn being in Pisces, ruled by that Neptune and opposing Mercury, this can be a time where some people want to check out because they might have lost something and they don't know how to face that void. And that is another thing about Pisces that I'm glad that I'm remembering to say. Pisces is about confronting a void. When something that was once there isn't, it's not about doing Libra in a distorted way of trying to usurp and fill that. It's not about keeping yourself busy and distracted, Virgo. It's about sitting with that pure emotion. And whenever you are meant to know the way to move forward, if you have a sincere intention, after being faithful and hopeful and trusting of your own inner knowing, it will be revealed to you. So if you're at this crossroads right now and you're feeling like you're being confronted with a void, maybe something ended, a job, a family dynamic, a relationship of some sort, maybe it can either be like the home or whatever. The key is to be able to sit with that uncomfortability of what once was there that isn't, because that is how restructuring occurs. Restructuring doesn't occur when we just keep doing what we've always done as a way to avoid. That's not what this is about. This is about sitting with the pure emotion and having faith that we will understand what it is that we're meant to do, what action to take. But that, again, it can't happen if we're continuously repeating the past. So there's that. And I think that's it. I'll put the coupon code in the description for the conference. Again, I'm lecturing over Cassandra, which, by the way, Cassandra is at 22 Capricorn. And if you haven't checked out my conversation I had with Michelle Dinch, where I go a bit over Cassandra and what I'm talking about for the lecture, it's here on my YouTube channel as well. Check it out, because for a lot of people right now, they are needing to speak and to say what it is that they need to say. So I will see you all soon. I will be posting another video soon. And again, there's the eclipse special going on for the next 2 weeks. I hope to see you soon.